Are you ready to say goodbye to the constant ups and downs of the artist income roller coaster? Whether you're a full-time artist who wants to increase and stabilize your income, a part-time musician who wants to go full-time, or a hobbyist who needs to fund your passion projects, this podcast will equip you with the tools, resources, and inspiration to make it happen. My name is Bree Noble. I'm a musician, best-selling author, and educator whose mission is to help musicians like you to increase the income you're already making and tap into new income streams so you can create a more diverse, stable, reliable income from music and finally ditch the starving artist mentality. Now let's dive into the Profitable Musician Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Bree Noble, and I am really excited to be here today with Sidney Swift. We're going to be talking about his new product called Recoup, but also just all about how we can use AI to connect with fans. And I'm really interested in this because, you know, we talk a lot about AI these days, and we're not really talking about it around this, how we can use it to get more data, how we can use it to actually create a better connection with fans. So I'm really interested to hear his take on that and how he's helping artists do that. But before we get into that, Sidney has a really interesting background, so I want to make sure that he's able to share that with you. So just let us know, like, what is your kind of backstory? How did you get involved in the music industry and get to where you are now?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick history. I've started as an intern maybe like 15 years ago in Miami, Florida. This was right around the time when like Lil Wayne was signing Drake. He had just started Young Money. Nicki Minaj was getting signed Tyga, and they were all headquartered out of a recording studio called Hit Factory in Miami. Mm-hmm. And around that same time, I just started interning at as many places as I could intern in the music industry. So got an internship at Hit Factory. Luckily was able to like kind of be a fly on the wall and also like clean the toilets for Lil Wayne and you know, had that experience. But it was really like the hip hop heyday of the 2010s. Rick Ross had a studio across the street. Khaled had a studio across the street. So I was like kind of right smack in the thick of things. And that's how I got started in the industry, was just interning just wherever I could. And then I kind of like leveled up from intern to producer like 3 or 4 months into my my internship, because Jason Derulo was coming into the studio, and I heard he was coming in, and at the later that day, I was talking to an engineer who was like, "I've been here for 5 years," and I was like, "I'm not about to spend 5 years to get to an engineering position." So I decided to like go into the studio where Jason was going to be, put all my beats on the computer, create a folder called like Beats for Jason. I left that night, came back. My boss was all angry, called me into his office and was like, you know, who put the beats on that computer? And I was like, oh, it was me, man. I'm about to get fired, huh? And luckily Jason's engineer was there and was like, oh, that was you, man? Like, we recorded to a bunch of your stuff. You got some cuts, come listen. And like overnight, it kind of went from intern to producer. And that's kind of how I got started in songwriting and producing in the industry. And then over the next 10 years, you know, did the songwriting and producing thing, went to LA, worked with everybody from Drake to Major Lazer to, you know, just all the pop and hip hop stuff that was going on in the 2010s. And then ended up in 2017 getting a label deal with Atlantic for a virtual artist project that we were working on. I just had all of these tracks that they were too weird to get placements. And so we decided to make like a virtual artist. This was before Little Michaela. The only other artist that was virtual was Gorillaz, and they were like, you know, 20 years old. So we thought it was a cool idea to kind of get all of these like weird songs out in the open. That project did okay. It got more industry accolades than it did like, you know, commercial accolades. But what it did was also, because it was a virtual artist, allowed me to really dive into the tech side of the industry, right? Like I took all of the advanced money, and instead of buying songs and studio time, since I already had all that, I just spent it all on development costs and interesting marketing plays. So from 2017 to today, I've just been kind of heads down in building out, you know, tools for musicians, using innovative AI and marketing techniques to kind of how do we separate how do we separate traditional marketing from the new age of marketing that's happening.
That's really interesting. So maybe you can explain for people that might not know, and I'm not sure that I do. What does it mean to be a virtual artist?
So it was an artist that was completely digital, and it basically wasn't me as the artist, right? It was a digital artist, and so it was more of a created artist that we could experiment on, more of like a brand, so to speak. Think of the Gorillas, where like it's just cartoon characters who are actually the artists and the musician makers behind the scenes. They're not necessarily the face of the brand. And so that's kind of was the idea is how do we create this virtual artist who can theoretically do a world tour all in one night, who we can experiment with interesting marketing rollouts, and like the artist can never say no because it's not a real person. And so it allowed us to a lot of creative freedom to experiment. It was my sandbox, so to speak.
That's really cool. And that's, yeah, you can't, like, if it's something doesn't go well, like doesn't damage their personal brand or something,
Exactly. And like, the artist would never wake up in a bad mood. Like, it was great.
That's funny. So what kind of things during that time did you learn that you are now kind of implementing for actual artists?
It's a great question. So, we signed the deal with a major, and the majority of artists, I think, have this idea of when you sign to a major, that's like your key and your ticket in, and then that's all you need, and then you're golden. And the reality is that it's so far from the truth. And a lot of the major label system I think of it more like they're like a VC company, and they're doing a lot of bets with the hopes of one will pay for the 100. And I learned really quickly, like, it was funny, like we launched a song on the project, like the first song we rolled out. And I think it got hit like 7 million streams in the first month or two, which is incredible for a new artist that didn't have a viral record, right? Like it wasn't like the record went viral, and that's why it was just through engaged fans and because we had a unique brand. But I got a call from my A&R after that release, and I was like, so like, are we going to fuel the fire? Like, we're obviously doing awesome. And he was like, theoretically, you're doing incredible for an out the box new artist. Unfortunately, during the label meeting, Cardi B's A&R was next to me on one side, and Ed Sheeran's A&R was next to me on the other, and they both had releases. So when you're sandwiched in between them, our 7 million looks puny to their 250 million here and this. And so it just skews the data, and the artists, it just skews the entire data. And I thought that was like an eye-opening moment of like, wow, like even though the metrics are saying green, go, fuel, fire, like there's something here, there's something broken in the system that isn't allowing isn't allowing the growth of the artist or the fuel to be put on the fire. And so that's kind of when I made it my mission to solve that problem, not just for signed artists, but just for like all artists who like who have incredible assets and IP and identities, and they just need the right teams that are actually focused on them and not on 20 other artists.
Well, it's a comparison problem in this situation. Like, for example, if two people are trying to lose weight and one person's 300 pounds and one person's 150 pounds, and they both lose 10 pounds, it's very different because it's a percentage, right? So I don't understand. I mean, I do, but does it make sense then for artists to either not try to get a major deal, to go with like an indie label, or just not even have a label?
Yeah, it makes sense to not even have a label unless, like, the difference. I think the key and this is across all industries, not just music, but like, it's more about the person than the machine, right? So like, I think like a lot of it has to do with who is your contact at the label? Do they have the ability to press a button to release funds, or do they have a boss who then has a boss who can release funds, right? Because if that's the case, then you have to go through three gatekeepers before anything happens, and then you become a question of like, is this worth fighting to get fired over or not? Versus if you have a someone at the label who has the ability to release funds and has conviction, and has a track record of taking risks, I think then that's a good signal to like, okay, you have somebody in your corner at the label. I would consider that kind of deal a success, or go play in that field. But with 99% of the time, that's not the case, and 99% of the time, you're starting out at the label, not signed to the CEO, and you don't have access to that person who can greenlight anything. And in that event, you have to then work your way up by just creating moments socially, moments, of virality. And in that case, you don't need the label to do that. Like they actually hurt your chances of doing that, because they pull you in all of these directions and give you feedback you don't need, when you can just stay focused on, I just need to create moments and build fans.
And plus, then if you're tied to one person, if that person leaves, and we all know that the people are moving around all the time in the industry, so it seems a little scary to like tie all of it to this one person that's going to be your champion at the label, but then they could move, they could, go start another label, they could do all kinds of things. So being your own champion is the best way to go, I always think. What about the money side? Like you said, labels have kind of become VC. Is there better ways to get that money that you need to fuel the marketing of what you're doing if you're going alone?
Great question. I did it through songwriting and production, so that was my that was my income stream, and I was lucky enough to like have a successful career doing that, which supplemented my my income and allowed me to experiment with the artist stuff. So like a lot of the suggestions for new artists I would be for like, write great music, but like don't think that it all needs to be yours. And there's if you can sell a song, if you can sell your production, if you can help other artists succeed, like that's a huge way to get funding. And then the other stuff is, I think brand partnerships is something that brand partnerships and like niche audience engagement is something that's untapped, that is traditionally saved for the major artists. Like you have a Beyonce who it's obvious to say like, okay, Beyonce's out of 70 million fans on Instagram, a percentage of them are dog lovers, so we get a brand partnership with Chewy.com pretty easily. Like their brand strength is obvious, but I think that there's a huge opportunity for smaller artists to be able to do the same thing now, just with more niche communities and more niche brands, with the power of AI. And that's really where I'm most focused on. I think the biggest opportunity is for up and coming artists is like, you can now identify, let's say you have 1,000 fans on Instagram. You can now identify, of those 1,000 fans, what percentage are into skateboarding in Asia. And then let's say it's 50 of them are in Asia skateboarding. It's really easy to then identify small mom and pop skateboarding shops in Asia that want to partner with micro influencers, a la you're an artist, and start to build out a relationship with them in order to grow your 50 skateboarding fans to 100 to 200 to 300. And so I think like that's a huge opportunity right now, is like micro niche fan growth and targeted fan growth with the help of brands and micro communities.
Wow, that's really interesting, and it's very true. And it has been in the past really hard to dig into that, to know that much detail about about the people that follow you. So that's super interesting. I'd be really interested to know, like I have about 14.4K on Instagram. I'd be really interested to know like what are the, the top 10 things that like, so are you kind of looking at like data point congregation? Is that how you kind of figure out what the things are that you would go after for that artist?
Yeah. So the way that we do it with Recoup is I can basically like let's just take your audience for example. I can put in your social data, and the AI analyzes your artist or your social brand, and then it goes into every one of your followers' accounts and pulls all of their data. And so it can see, oh, this person posts about dogs. The last three posts about dogs, they have a dog emoji in their bio. So they probably love pets. And then they can put them in the pet lovers segment in, New York. And so now you have an idea of, okay, cool. Like I have a uniquely bubbling fan base of pet lovers in New York. How do I leverage my brand to go there and grow within that community, right? And it's as simple as like going onto pet lovers in New York on Reddit and starting to talk to that community. Like, and it's just inserting yourself where your fans already are. Like what I've found is that a fan converts into a listener of an artist, or in your case, of a podcast listener, from like a passive listener to an active listener, 10 times quicker if they know that you also align with other belief systems or identities in their head. So,
oh, you're speaking my language. I mean, this is what I call connection points, and absolutely, it's identities, beliefs, and core values are the things that, like you said, it's going to be like, oh, I know this person. I recognize this person. I feel comfortable. I feel safe.
Yep, exactly. And it's so how can artists and brands, podcasters like yourself, like how can you identify where those opportunities exist within your following? How can you grow that and cultivate that in order to then leverage it by either growing more fans in that niche or saying to a brand, hey, I have 10% of my audience is anime fans. Like, let's do a collaboration between this anime company and my audience.
That's really cool. So let's say there is 10%, right? Let's just say there's 10% of my audience that loves dogs. Okay. So I'm not a dog lover. So I probably wouldn't choose that, right? Because I would want to be able to get behind that thing and really be passionate about it. But like that, say there's also 10% that love cats and I love cats, then I might want to choose that to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it all depends on like from a release strategy, what your next campaigns are. Even if you don't love dogs, I'm sure you can find a way to tie in dogs on like a media tour or something, or bring somebody from that world onto your podcast to talk to activate all of those fans. And it's just being empowered with the data allows you to strategize so much better, than not having that data.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. That data sounds like super golden, and it's golden for the people that want to promote their thing as well, because then they can reach those people directly and have access to people, a group of people that they wouldn't normally have access to.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. Wow, that's cool. So how, I don't know, ethical, it's not like unethical, right? Like it's very much, this is the data. We can just process it so much faster. And, I just remember back in the, 2017 or whatever, or 2015, when all this stuff was coming out about Facebook and how they were, gathering all this data, and it was such a big deal. And I feel like now with AI, people are like, it's like, that would be like shrug now,
Yeah, no, I think there's two trains of thoughts with AI. There's like the current state of AI and what it's capable of doing. And then like this other train of thought, which kind of gets into the more unethical, fun conversation of like where this thing is going.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like when we talk about like what can things do, how can artists and creators use AI now to help them grow their fan base and get paid? It's basically using AI. Otherwise, they would need to hire a team of people, which usually is outside of their budget. So, like, it replaces the need for you to hire an assistant to go through every one of your Facebook followers' pages and then write on a spreadsheet, like, this person likes dogs. This person posts about football. And like,
Right. Or even just the old school, like doing a survey of your audience.
exactly. So like, I think that there's the huge opportunity for artists, and I think that AI right now is a bad rap. So a lot of the industry is shying away from it, when in the reality, like the artists, creators that like lean into the AI tools that exist are going to have such a huge advantage over everybody who's not using it. It's the same thing of like when social media came out, and half of the world like rolled their eyes and was like, this is a fad. But the people that got on it and started building then were light years ahead of everybody else, 10 years later. And it's the same thing with AI. Like, how do you find the tools that like are you're comfortable with doing? Like, I know there's a huge debate right now over like, music creation and things like that. And well, I have my thoughts on that. I think the more important question is like, just find out how you can leverage AI in any of your workflows, and not fight it. Like, instead of spending your energy fighting against the genie that's already out of the bottle, like, I just say being accepting of what it is and saying, okay, cool, how do I use it to do what I'm doing faster?
Yeah. So I am curious about your opinions on using it in relation to songwriting. How do you feel like the right way is to incorporate AI into that workflow?
I have a very unique opinion on this because I was working on a virtual artist project. And also because I come from the production world. So it's like, I'm an early adopter of all tools. And so I'm all for AI and figuring out however you can use it to optimize. Like, when it comes to creative tooling, like, I think it's incredible. I personally think it's incredible that like, I can, what historically would have taken me 12 hours, and five people in a studio, and coordination and studio time and all of that stuff, like, I can now get done in 2 minutes with like an AI tool. That's not to say that like the end result of that 2 minutes is like the final, and like I would take that and then put it on radio, and like, but leveraging the tool for what it is, where it's like it's taking you from, it's just saving you time and effort. I think what's most interesting about AI, as in the creative process, is the scalability of things. So the way I see this, is once your music hits a certain quality level, and it's like, I think there's you got to put in your 10,000 hours, whatever you want to call it, to get the music to a quality level. But once you get there, then it just becomes a numbers game of how many songs are you putting out, how many pitches are you doing, how many submissions are you doing? Like, it's how many shots on net, right? And power laws then kick in. And so traditionally, before AI, I could make 1,000 beats a year, and of the 1,000 beats, 10% of them would get written to. And then of that 100, 10% of them would be good. And then of them, one would get cut and become a hit, right? So like that's traditionally what happens. And so what AI does now, all of the sudden, is it turns the 1,000 tracks that I was capable of doing into 1 million tracks. And so my shots on net scale crazy. And so that just means that I can have more ideas. I can send more things out to artists. I can put more stuff on the internet. I can see what sticks. And so my time is less spent on things that don't matter, and I can spend more time on things that do because I'm shooting more shots.
Do you think that this is a perspective that is more specific to the hip hop genre or electronica genre or genres like that versus singer-songwriter type genres where, everybody feels like this song is part of my soul and it's my baby and I'm birthing it, and, they don't tend to release hundreds of songs a year?
I don't think it should be limited to genre. I think that the AI should be looked at as a tool, and as a creative, your job is to use all of the tools that you have capable in your arsenal to make the best art possible and connect with the most amount of fans as possible, right? And so so however you end up using that AI tool, even if it's as a co-producer where you are writing the lyrics and it's helping you do the production, or vice versa, if you're not a singer and you're making the beats and you're having it help you, it's just how do you leverage it as a tool to make your creativity 10x.
Well, and I think it then changes the idea of what an artist is.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? In the past, like, an artist is the person that writes the songs. And I know it didn't used to be this way before the 70s. Like, most people didn't write their own songs. But recently, the artist is the person who writes, performs, records the songs. And now, it could be the artist could be a lyric writer.
Yeah. I mean, the artist could be just the performer. It's funny. I think about this a lot, which is a deeper subject on like the future of like music as a whole. But I think about like when technology disrupts genres a lot. So like when you think about like when the guitar got plugged in to an amp, rock music was created. When the turntable was used to sample, hip hop was created. And before those technologies and those tools were used in that way for music, nobody could have predicted the genre of rap in 1960. Like, if I would have asked you, like, what does music sound like in 2000? You could have never said Kendrick Lamar. Like, it never would have went there, because it was like the technology didn't exist to create the music to be able to put that in the cultural phenomena. So like I think of it very similar with AI tools right now, which is like I think about my 2-year-old son, and as he grows up and how he's going to be using the tools, and then how he's going to be sharing his creations with his friends, and how is that going to sound, and what are they going to care about? Like what does it mean to be an artist when you can make an incredible song and share it with your friends, and you don't need to know music or know how to sing? Like, things get really, really crazy real quick in the creation and distribution.
You don't need to, honestly, you don't need to know how to do anything. Like, you could get the AI to write you some good lyrics. You could, I just want to write a song about this. You could get it to write your melody. And that's what I think freaks me out a little bit. It's like, you don't actually need to have any skill in order to say, now I'm an artist.
Well, I look at it a lot like the creator, the last 10 years of the media industry, and how you could have said the same thing for influencers who now have the power of a media platform on YouTube, right? Who are more powerful because of their podcasts than the legacy media. When a legacy media would turn around and be like, but they don't even have any skill, didn't even go to journalism school, they shouldn't be able to have an opinion on any of this. But the reality is they do, because they leveraged the technology, and they created stuff that people loved. I think it's the exact same way now, where as long as you leverage the tools and you create things that people love, like, you then become what once was. Like, you can become my grandma can go type in a Suno, like a song, and make a song. And if she figures out a distribution channel for that, she is now a artist. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. kind of freaks me out a little bit, but this is a conversation between a Gen Xer and what are you, millennial, young millennial, early Gen Z? Like, we have different perspectives because of our experience. I'm so trying to be open to it, right? Because I want to hold on to certain beliefs, but you're right. Like, I am trying to be open to what you're saying because the examples that you give from the past do absolutely make sense, and they are good analogies. So I'm working on it.
Just try it. Just go make some records, see what happens. I think like there's this whole argument right now of like what is right and what is wrong with music and how it should be. But I think the real question, and it gets way more interesting, is the question of like in 10 years when everything is AI generated and you don't know the difference, what matters?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like when it no longer becomes a question of is this right, and it becomes a question of this is it. Like it's happening. It's almost like right now. It's kind of like you can fight all day about like YouTubers and influencers like having the ability to connect with people, like, but all they're doing is making videos. They don't really have any talent, but it's the way it is. And they're like, so like now what do we do with that new reality? And so I think that's like the most interesting question is like, from an artist perspective, from like a media perspective, is like, what are you doing today to prepare for the future world? Like, it's going in 10 years, it's going, the music industry and entertainment industry as a whole is going to be a lot different than today. What's not going to change is people are going to still want to connect with other humans at certain levels, and like they're going to want to listen to live music. Like I don't think that's ever going to go away. Mm-hmm. So like there are some things that are like what's not going to change, and maybe double down on that stuff that it's like I know people will always value live music. So how do I get really good at performing live if I'm an artist?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I tell artists that I work with that for sure. It's like they can't reproduce that.
Yeah.
And if you're good at it, then double down on it for sure. And I agree. I mean, I have become so much more open to this, and I know I need to. But even just from the media perspective of, I run a podcast called Women of Substance, and, I'm choosing music to play on that, to feature. And I'm constantly like, now I'm like, how do I know this artist is even female? Probably I don't. Like, they could have used a female voice. This could be entirely generated by AI. I just need to be like, that's okay. Like, if they just send me this song, it's performed by a female and it's a good song, I'm going to play it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it then scratches the question of like, what do you mean by women of substance? Is it the person singing, or is it the creator behind it, or is it, so like,
yeah, that's always been a hard one. I've always kind of just said it like the artist needs to be female, like the person singing needs to be female, the person performing it needs to be female. But yeah, it's like, well, maybe the songwriter was female and then they decided to, make this thing. And yeah, so you kind of have to draw the line somewhere to create a container that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I love this, like all this philosophical conversation, but I would love to just kind of hear what your tools can do for artists. Like how can they use them if they were to use your tools?
Yeah. So right now, Recoup does the fan data scraping really well. You can go onto the platform, just put in your artist info, get all of your fan data, break it into segments, and then understand from those segments where the opportunities lie. Think of it like ChatGPT, but with all of your artist data and a lot more context on the music industry. So it's a lot less general, like what should I do for my rollout? And then, as ChatGPT would say, like 7-day content calendar where you should do Instagram reels. Like, no shit. Like,
yeah.
This has access to your fans and it understands who you are as an artist. So it will say more things like, well, your last release did X and your fans like Y. So, and similar performing artists are Z. So here's some interesting content ideas that you can do, or brand partnership ideas. And then it'll also like write brand partnership emails that you can then take and send out. So for example, like, hey, a lot of your fans are pet lovers. Here is a small mom and pop pet store that exists in the location where you're about to go on tour. And then I'll write you an email pitch so that you can send it to them to see if you can partner with them. So like little things like that to help you kind of grow. The next phase, which I'm really excited about, which gets a little bit more into the dystopian side of world, is we're releasing next month an Instagram agent for community management. So it will help you like comments, respond to comments, engage with your fans, build fan communities, and basically be your social media manager on your team on autopilot. And you can just kind of sit back and it'll grow your Instagram for you. And then the next stage of that is just basically recreating agents that can be your record label in your pocket. So you have if you were to sign to a label, you would get a project manager, you would get a brand manager, you would get a community manager, social media manager, and you would have all of these people working for you. And so our goal is to basically take those people and give artists the power of having that team, but for a fraction of the cost and not having to sign away their life to a major.
Got it. So an AI agent's virtual record label, basically team.
Exactly.
So I wanted to go back to the thing that, it does do right now. And I love the idea about sending emails with pitches and things. Does it provide kind of charts and like data that you can give to these people that you're pitching to show? Because you can't just say like, oh, I know that this many people are dog lovers. They're going to want to see like the data behind it.
Yep, absolutely. It'll scrape everything, and then it gives you a report that you have that you can then take to the brand or partnership.
That's really cool. I mean, this is really powerful. I had Justin Moore on here recently talking about his Sponsor Magnet book and how musicians can really, make some more money by getting sponsors. And this is a great tool to help you do that.
Yes, it is an incredible tool. I think, a lot of musicians, especially coming up, they don't realize you need a team of people like that understand that world to help to do it. And usually musicians don't have the resources to do that, or the infrastructure or systems set up in place to like understand the opportunities and sponsorships available. And I think it's also traditionally like it's slowly starting to change where musicians are now thinking of themselves more as like small businesses, and then using tools like small businesses would, and the systems like small businesses would. And so, helping them get on that path more than the traditional route of like, I'm just going to go sign a record label and let them figure it out for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think I started this podcast almost 10 years ago, but basically maybe exactly 10 years ago when this is coming out. And the positions and thoughts processes about the way that they do their career has changed so much over those 10 years. They understand now, most of them, that they are entrepreneurs and they're running their own business, and it makes sense for them to do that. So just adopting a set of tools is what you do as a small business to be able to, without having a big team, to have, more reach and all that. So it makes a lot of sense. So is there any last thing you want to tell musicians to make them, understand the power of AI and not be afraid of the future?
I would just say try it. Jump on Recoup. We do free trials. You can use the platform and get value from it. I would test all the tools. I think there's a huge value in being the person in the circle or amongst your friend group who like has tried everything and knows a little bit more about that stuff than everybody, because that just means you're going to just be ahead of your circle and your peers, and that just gives you an upper hand when it comes to releases and what you're able to do with with making a living doing what you love. It's already so hard. Use all the tools that you can at your disposal.
Yep. Absolutely. It's not going away. We need to understand it. We need to embrace it. So thank you so much for entertaining all of my philosophical thoughts about AI. And, we're all in progress here, I think.
I understand. What I can do too is on the side, I'll set up your account and we can scrape your data and I can kind of walk you through the whole thing.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. Maybe I could come on the podcast and do a solo episode and go through my data and just kind of, show people how cool it is to see what it gives you. I mean, I would love to know what my audience looks like on the back end. So that's going to be super interesting. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sidney. This has been really interesting, enlightening, and mind opening for the future. I love your thoughts about what the future of music is going to look like. And we do need to think about that. We need to have that in mind. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you did today.
Thank you, Bree.
Thanks for listening to the Profitable Musician Show. I would love to know your takeaways and aha moments from this episode. Leave me a comment over at profitablemusician.com so I can bring you more of the information, interviews, and resources that you love. Thanks to Rondi Fay, one of my Academy members, for providing the music for our podcast. You can check her out at rondifay.com. That's RANDIFAY.com. Just remember, knowledge is power, but without implementation, it is useless. And inspiration without action is merely entertainment. But I know you're not just a dreamer, you are a doer. And I promise I'll be here every week to support you and remind you that you can be a profitable musician.